Hello and welcome. Okay. So, what I want to try is I've got a time lapse of me going through and doing all the highlights on this stuff. I've uploaded a few previous ones where I go through and I'm painting and kind of it's sped up by 25% and you can see the process, but I want to talk to you guys about some of the stuff that I'm doing here on this polish pass. Let me open up the previous versions of this. So, just to be able to run you down through how I got to where I'm at. So, in the beginning, we start with these digital paintings with a well-developed digital sketch. Now, to be able to get to this digital sketch, I start with an extremely rough thumbnail. That gives me a grocery list. Then I go shopping for other digital illustrations, not paintings. Sometimes photographic references are good, but I really want to see how other artists are treating this shape language, how they're handling their shading, what kind of stuff they're doing there to be able to get to this developed sketch that's really got a lot of pre-planning in it. For this one, I'm not using line work. If I was, then I'd go through and I'd do the line work. For this one, I'm doing color blocking. So here's my color blocking. My colors are being pulled from a reference image that has got the lighting and the shadows and a good range of color that's going to be similar to what it is I'm looking to do within this painting. So I'm pulling my base colors from there. These are going to get modified and edited later on, but it is a starting point for me to move forward with within the painting. So from here, it doesn't look like too much, but I can get an overall idea of how my shapes are looking and how they're coming together within this painting. And if this is working and compositionally, the shape language is there, then I think I'm in a pretty good spot to move forward. From this point forward, I'm going to be working, I've got two different shots here. I've got the interior and the exterior. I'm working them in tandem. So I'm going to do all of my color blocking on both shots, starting from the very back and working my way forward. This is stage two. Stage one, having the well-developed sketch. Stage two, doing the color blocking. For each one of these stages that I'm going to go through, I'm going to go start from the back and then work my way to the front. You're going to see that within the sped up time lapse later in this video. But yeah, this next step, stage three, is the initial shadow pass. So I've got two of these. You can see the purple is changing a little bit here, just to give it more of a middle ground tone or color. So I'm not working too deep right away. And yeah, so I go through, I do my shadow pass. Also going to do this shadow pass on the interior. The shadow pass is really helpful. I'm working with my sketch still in my visible within Photoshop when I'm doing this. And I'm just trying to rough in where the lighting is going to be. This is starting to describe the light within my piece. I can't stress how important figuring out where that lighting is coming from. For this one, it's coming from the top left-hand side. You can tell by the shadow direction underneath the cart. And I'm learning a lot about my painting while I'm doing this shadow pass. Once I've got the shadow pass, I've got a good idea of what the forms are going to look like, and I know where my highlights are going to land at. So the next step is going through and got some interior shots, doing the highlights. So the highlights, this is what it looks like with the highlights and sort of a what you call it? Do I have another one? No. Okay. So there's my first pass, excuse me, with the highlights. So this is stage four. I'm working from the back and then working my way to the front. And you can see that this is really starting to come together at this stage. We're getting a lot more color in there. We're starting to get some of the brights. And the buildings within the inside of the city walls are really starting to become a lot more visible also. Let me go back. There we go. There's our previous city walls our previous buildings inside of the city walls and kind of keep your eyes in this back section here. And then as we move forward to now we've got a lot more definition for where the light is hitting and it's working with our shadow pass. From there, I'm doing the same thing on my interior shot as well. I'm going through and working my lights and doing an initial highlight pass after I do my initial shadow pass on both shots. Each one of these is a different stage. So one stage is the shadow pass, the next stage is the interior pass, and I'm doing each one of these stages on each painting at the same time. Each time I do this, I'm working from the back and then working my way to the front. I hope that makes sense. Now, once I've got this section done, this is my starting point. I've got a really good idea of what's working, what's not quite working. I've been through this painting a few different times from the back to the front. And now I know where my pain points are and what I'm going to want to go in when I'm adding a little bit more color to these spaces and really making those highlights pop and exaggerating where I want the focus to be and pulling back other things. So from there, this is what the painting starts to turn into, which um, at this stage, I have done so much pre-planning and pre-work that it really starts to come together in a big way. So let's go in and let's look at the highlight pass. So from the highlight pass, I know where my bricks are going to go. I know where I want my highlights on my bricks, and I'm just pushing those highlights further and pushing some of those shadows down. You can see I ended up changing the castle color within the background because of the way that I'm working and doing non-destructive editing. These are all on different layers, and it's really not that big of a deal for me to go in and change the color space on those castles. I just wanted it to match with the castle wall a little bit more. I felt like this looked a little bit disconnected with the spire over on the right-hand side. And so I've gone through and I've updated that. And some other cool things that are happening. I've got some bounce light coming into the roof of the overhang for the city gate that wasn't there before, and that's giving it a lot more interest. And you can see how I'm using that bounce lighting and those other colors outside of the purple to really kind of give it a lot more life and a lot more vibrancy underneath there, which is really helping the overall composition out, I think, quite a bit. And yeah, so adding some little flowers and some other details within the grass and trying to pull some of those other colors from the rest of the scene into the grass is pretty helpful. You can see how much I'm doing that with the rocks as well and pulling in some of those browns and reds and blues into the rocks just to be able to make the composition work quite a bit better. The hay bale in the front, I think, is a good example of what it is that I'm going through and doing as I work my way from the back to the front on this next pass, as well as the back of the cart. So you can see that half moon crescent shape of dark kind of medium purple on the back of the cart. And as we move forward, you can see how I'm painting in between my highlight pass and my shadow pass. The same thing is happening on the hay bale, where I'm pushing back and pulling back into that hay bale quite a bit more. So those darker lines that are on the hay bale are still there, but they're not nearly as commanding visually. I've painted over them and I've softened some of those lines throughout this thing to be able to make it work. You can also see how much highlighting I'm doing on the top shingles of the cart to be able to pull the viewer's attention there, and also creating a heat spot on the door because that's where I want the character to go to really make that stand out and feel bright as well. Some other cool things that are going on with this. I've got within the time lapse video, watch for when I go in and do the shading on the two banners here. The idea for the banners that I wanted is that it's going to be the goose that laid the golden egg. This is the city where that took place. Is a little backstory within the movie or the TV show that this is taking place in, and so that is the city's banner in honor of the goose that laid the golden egg. They have a city they've incorporated into their coat of arms. So I thought that was pretty funny. But I was able to do the shading on this banner. It still has some lighting in it. You can see how flat they look before, and now they look a lot more 3D, and they're working with the lighting, but the lighting isn't too intense. So that's kind of an interesting thing to think about here as well, is how to be able to go through and really think through your light spaces. Not everything needs to be super black, super dark. Some of it is going to be a lot softer. That was a big thing that I ended up doing with this as well. So you can see some of the overhang in the top of the piece, just above those two banners, that big purple line that's a horizontal up at the top. That's becoming quite a bit lighter because there's just kind of commanding too much attention previously. and I'm going through and correcting for that. I think this is, yeah, so I've done a little bit more within Photoshop since that last image that I saved out, and I ended up brightening up the ground quite a bit more. So we'll try and hold the two side by side so that we can see the difference. Zoom out here just a little bit and pull it over, get all this stuff out of the way. Okay, that's about as close as we're gonna get them. All right. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so yeah, the one on the right now, I've also gone through and I felt like some of the lines were getting a little bit too dark right up in here still after I made that adjustment. And the ground overall wasn't bringing me into the foreground enough. It felt like it was a little bit too dark. And I really, the issue I was having was with these kind of army green um, shadows that were taking place here because I was using purple up at the top, and it just wasn't quite jiving with me, especially with this sort of, it almost looked like grass that was on the ground right here. It didn't come across quite how I wanted it to, as if it was leaves that were overhanging into the shot. I even thought about putting in a bush that was overhanging in the top right hand side, but I decided I didn't like that too much. It was just sort of taken away from my light source and too big of a way. See, there's my bush that I was going to put in it. And it just we're just sort of losing something right there. I kind of like it being able to see all the rock details up in the left and gives our eyes just a little bit more room to be able to rest. So we do have some good resting space up in the top left-hand side, the bottom right-hand side, and yeah, we've got a good focal point. So you can imagine the character jumping off, running over, and then going into the cart. One thing that I've got to still do on this is I haven't attached the aux to the cart in any type of way. So I want to go ahead and create some kind of beam or something, chassis, just like we see on the horse here in the front, that's actually helping you understand that the two are related. Because right now it looks like the ox is just randomly meandering into the city with a cart that doesn't have anything that's not being pulled. So I want to be able to correct for that a little bit. Yeah, and I hope that that gives you some things to think about when it comes to the detailing for this painting and how we can go through and move from, because I know, you know, for a lot of you guys just starting with digital paint, starting from something like this or even this area and then figuring out how to get it to look like the let me go back in here. The one on the left-hand side can seem like a pretty daunting task. And I'm trying to be as methodical as I can. This method of working through the shadow pass, then into the highlights, and then joining the two together is a really, really fast working method. It's not the only working method digitally out there. These are creative tools, so you know they're there for your exploration. And I'll probably, when I'm doing the yaks, harness that's attaching it to the cart, go back and make some final adjustments and some other little tweaks to the scene to really make it start to sing. One thing that I've also got within this shot here is this layer. We'll turn it yellow so you can see it, but this is a light map. So right now I've got it set to screen. It's down to 13%, but I can turn this up and that really turns the sunlight up within the shot, but that becomes a little bit distracting and it's pulling too much away. So 13% is what I landed on, but that essentially gives me a area light that I can come in and start to turn up the brightness if I want to. So it's there, and here's what it looks like when it's off. So it's very, very subtle. It's barely on at all, but that little light just kind of helps to reinforce where the sunlight is coming from and soften some of the overall colors within that space. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way that this thing has come together within my shot. And yeah, the next thing that I would do is I'm going to go through and do the same sort of pass. So within the interior shot, we haven't really looked at that one yet. I'm going to go now and start really detailing out the interior and working my way through that. So going back doing, now that I've got my really brights established over here, I could start pulling some of these colors directly from my exterior painting and then start painting them over the top of the door. I'm going to work this one the exact same way, in which I work from the very back and then towards the front. And there's some things in this that I still need to do. So I really want to, as I'm starting to work on the highlight pass within this interior scene, I'm going to go in and I want to make sure that I am getting. We've already got some of the connection between the dark areas and the highlights established, but I want to do that a little bit more and darken up some of these spots so that it feels like the light is pooling in this space or not quite being able to creep in. Remember, if the door is open, cracked just this little bit, there's going to be rays of light that are shooting into the left. The right-hand side isn't going to be as bright, so I want to be able to establish that in a cool and interesting way, and it's just going to look darker and more cramped on the inside. The other thing that I haven't really been able to explore as much as I want to is on the exterior of this cart. Let's use my hand. There's this window here, right in the middle. And that window, the sun is coming directly into it. So I imagine that that window is going to exist somewhere right around here off the screen. And so I want to make sure that I am accounting for that extra bit of light that's coming into the space in a really unique way. So we've got light coming in from the left, light hitting over here on the left from the window, and then all of this stuff hit back here needs to be quite a bit darker just to be able to account for the contrast that's going to hit from sort of these two spotlights that are going over to the left and really making our dragon say, oh my gosh, close the door, it's too bright now. And how can I sell that type of lighting within this piece? So that's what the next time lapse video is going to be about, is me going through and working my way slowly through this interior to be able to show you how I'm going through and thinking through that. So yeah, hope this is helpful for you guys for the breakdown, and yeah, keep up the great work.